Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Trevor Fernandes, and I'm sorry, Link.
Lenkiewicz. I always say it's like Stankiewicz.
Oh, there you go. Now I can pronounce it. My last name is Bua, and everybody says it wrong. So I hope you don't take offense. My name has
Not
been
at all.
whole
No,
life too.
I was born. I've had this curse since birth, so I've learned to acclimate.
Oh, cool. No disrespect intended. So, first off, thank you for coming on the channel. People who watch my channel know this is an odd time for me, but you know what? I enjoyed your comic, so I wanted to talk to you and make it a time that was beneficial for both of us. So, thanks a lot.
I listen. You were the one that did all the moving for me, so I really appreciate being here.
I'm just going to address the chat and then we'll start talking. We got Nick Axe. Nick Axe is the artist on Crom the Destroyer and a very good help on my comic, which is on Fun My Comic right now, Heroic Tales #1. And this is a link to your link tree. This is all of your social medias and campaigns and things like that.
Hmm.
And for those of you who are joining us and don't know what we're talking about, you have a Kickstarter project called Rise. It's active right now. Issue #2. And can you get issue #1 also?
Absolutely. Yeah, plenty of options to get issue #1. There are several like base tier bundles in the primary rewards, and for those of you that are familiar with Kickstarter, once you select your primary reward, you can then add add-ons to the cart. So if you want particular individual covers of issue 1, those are also available in the add-on menu as well. But what's cool is if you're catching up, there are some great ways to do that and save a buck. So you can get the A covers for like $22 between the two of them, and mind you, it's 74 pages between the two of them, so you're getting plenty of content. And the A covers will actually all connect when the series is said and done. So that includes the 2 A covers from interior artist Ryan Best.
Cool. And now we got Marcus and Nick, my two moderators, battling it out. They want a prize for being first. Nick, you get my undying love. How's that? That's more valuable than gold or anything.
The Marvel
So,
No Prize, right?
yeah, you'll get a yes prize. It's legally distinct from a no prize. Oh God, tapioca pudding. All right, so let's talk about your comic. You have a comic book called Rise. This is the first time you and I talking. You know, we kind of coming in cold. We don't know each other, but I was looking through Kickstarter and I just saw the cover for your comic, and what struck me was the design for the costume of the hero, the red and white. And I'll bring up your campaign page so people know what I'm talking about. But pardon me. People who follow me know that I'm very strict about my superhero costume design, and yours followed the rules. So I was like, I gotta check this out. You know, so you're a perfect example of somebody who just the costume design made me a fan. And here I am trying to share this. Just double checking to okay, because my computer's been acting funny. So I love this red and white, simple and elegant superhero design. Did you design that?
So I had a rough sketch that I took to Ryan that was definitely in need of some workshopping. And so he came back after we had sort of discussed and brainstormed with 4 designs, and I liked pieces from several of them. And we eventually expanded that to come up with 2 more additions that were amalgams of the designs, and then eventually we settled on this one, which I felt like sort of captured simplicity. It has a strong silhouette. It's not overcomplicated, but it has a lot of design elements that I love from like this sort of Superman archetype.
Oh yeah.
Big broad emblem, highlights at the cuffs and at the boots. I totally respect the love for the trunks, but I feel like the trunks really work best for something like a Superman with that iconicity. I wanted this to still feel somewhat modern. And so we ended up settling on what it is now. And, you know, the logo, I mean, not sure if anybody realizes it is kind of phallic. It's meant to be sort of phallic. This is a story about exploring the male ego and, you know, the sex is definitely a major part of it. So there were actually some really early designs where that logo was kind of inverted and really hit people on the head with what we were doing. But yeah, we ended up settling on this one, and I'm super happy with it.
Okay, so you're not an artist. You're I hate to say just a writer because writers are. I'm just a writer. I can't draw to save my. So I sent rough sketches of my designs to Renzo, my artist, and it's just amazing to see when a guy like me can't draw and then a professional draws it. It's so cool. But I always say that the superhero costume, simple and elegant. You use two color choices, red and white, and to me, those are heroic colors. They're bright. White is pure, red is striking. Uh, was this just like an accident that you just picked two colors?
No, no, not at all. I mean, I think part of the conceit of the story is that we're obviously taking a little bit of advantage of the iconicity around the Superman figure, even though this is aggressively different from your
All right.
typical Superman
I'll
project.
bring up
Or
the campaign in a minute just so we could talk for a bit, and then I'll show off the whole campaign.
sure. So red was definitely something I knew I wanted to have as a major component of the costume, and um, given the themes that we explore in the story, I wanted white to represent something as far as purity and sort of regality and integrity. And so we were thinking about a third highlight color, maybe like a yellow or a gold, but the reality was is that we didn't need it. Um, and so we ended up sticking with this sort of simple duotone suit. And Ryan thankfully is so good at composition and design that he was able to create sort of these striking accent pieces between the two colors that makes the suit, I think, very identifiable. It evokes some of my favorite design language as far as like contemporary superhero comics go. Like I really like the design language behind the lead character in Irredeemable. I felt like it was effective and not overdoing it. I think superhero costumes often can overdo it
Yes,
way too much, and so we really wanted to pull back and strike that balance between something fresh and new while still taking advantage of the 85 years of design, that have been constantly changing.
I just want to compare my my costume design to yours, and then we'll go into your campaign. But first, I don't get many super chats, so when I do, I got to address them right away. Travis Patrick, $10. Here's to getting your money back for purchasing those awfully edited Antos book. Yeah, I did a video last night of these Star Trek books, and I did particularly like them. So thank you for reimbursing me, and thank you for the super chat.
Hmm.
So I'm going to. I'm pushing the wrong buttons. Okay, this is a. Okay. I thought I just panicked for a second. I thought I turned off. This is the first appearance of my character, the patriarch, in my comic heroic tales. He's a father figure. The purple represents Rome, and the imperial. So that's why I did purple, gold, and white. I did a lot of white because I thought the white was purity and innocence and goodness. And again, just like your comic, it's not a lot of lines. Very similar,
Mhm.
And it evokes Superman on purpose. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to show you that why I was really taken by your design for your superhero and your costume because it's very similar to mine, and I think we're exploring a lot of similar themes: maleness and the patriarch is a father, a husband, and a superhero, and everything like that. So again, I'm gonna hitting these buttons, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to hit the wrong button. So I'll bring back your campaign here.
Sure.
So tell us about your comic and your character as I babble on way too much.
No, it's okay. So Rise is sort of an exploration of the male ego, the perils that come with it, and this idea that questions like what would happen if the strongest man on the planet had to feel good to do good. So um, his powers
Okay.
scale with the amount of dopamine in his system, and therefore making him performatively able or not. And for me, as a young man, I think I mean, every person on the planet has to come of age with these standards set about by them. But I think speaking specifically to the male experience, I think we're told at a young age by an older generation that a man is to be sort of rigid and strong and fierce and a provider. And now you have sort of a more new age, progressive understanding of masculinity or interpretation thereafter, that a man should be sort of soft and um, loving and a little bit supplicative. And I think that the right answer is always somewhere in between. But the reality is that you have these two extreme sides that are very aggressive in telling you what a man ought to be or
Wow.
what a man should be. And I think more often than not, though, the common denominator between the two is that they say that a man needs to be this for other people. And I think that is a heavy burden to bear when your entire life is is really to function for other people and to perform for other people. And what happens when you don't really have the foundational structure inherent to yourself, that internal strength, that internal motivation and desire, but you're told that you need to do for everyone else. And so this is sort of an exploration of that, of this man with this responsibility that he takes on rather gladly and feels tied to, but does not kind of ground himself. And sort of what are the ramifications of that? What type of things can we explore through this sort of intimate setting? And we are very consciously sort of issuing a lot of things in the superhero genre that I find to be distracting or that don't really serve this story very well. It is not your typical superhero story,
No,
and
no, which I
it's made.
appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's just really, this is the story about the man who wears the cape and the type of man that it would take, and sort of the real, I think, struggles that somebody would face with that level of responsibility and exposure.
I think we're exploring similar themes. And I wonder if something attractive, because again, his, I just wanted to show you this, and I'll get back to your campaign, I promise. When you were talking about all the responsibilities of the male, and you're supposed to be, one extreme is you're going to be tough and unloving, and the other side is supplicant. That's why I made up my character. He's called the patriarch, and I think I want him to be everything that's positive about maleness. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a protector. And this is his family. He's got 7 kids. This is his wife down here. He, at the end of the day, he wants to come home and spend time with his family. But when he's gifted or cursed, or however you want to look at it, with awesome powers, the only way to keep your family safe is to keep the world safe. So I think in some sort of unplanned way, you and I are talking about the same thing from different perspectives. It's kind of neat. And again, I just wanted to show that image, and I'll bring back your campaign, and then I promise this time we'll check out everything. Every time I hit that button, I get scared that I hit the wrong button. Yeah, I've done it before. Just turned off everything in the middle, so I get nervous whenever I click. So, tell us about you have a RT. Well, you know what? I'm gonna play your trailer. This is like safe. All right, there's going to be no curse or anything like that. So,
yeah, you're safe.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit this, and I will expand.
Mind if I sit here?
That's fine.
John.
Isa.
2 of whatever she's having, please. I've gotta go.
I guess you have to save the world or something.
I don't deserve this power.
Cool. Cool. Oh, I didn't mean to remove that. Again, I'm so bad at technology stuff. So, this is your concept that you hired your artist and your team, or is this a
Yeah,
collaborative?
yeah. So I wrote, created the series, wrote it. I'm art directing, and I'm working with some pretty amazing talent from all around the world to get this thing done.
And is this a limited series? Is it a continuing series?
Limited. So these issues are going to be ranging probably between like the 34 to 40 page per issue. I think I mean, ironically, when I first launched the series, I thought we were going to cap at 3. I realized that that is impossible with the way that we're setting things up, and for me to really pay off the emotional stakes. So I think it's really going to be around 5 of these oversized issues, totaling somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 pages when all is said and done.
And are you going to collect it all in a big graphic trade
Event-
paperback?
Eventually, but with the way the pace is and sort of all that's said and done when you're producing a series, we probably won't do a graphic novel until like 2026. It'll be
Okay,
a while until then.
cool. I love the superhero costume design. Simple, elegant. I always say no unnecessary lines. You know who you remind me of more than Superman was Captain Marvel. I guess that's just a natural with the red, and instead of the lightning bolt, you got that the white. This cover is outstanding. Not that any of your other covers are bad, but this is outstanding.
Yeah, that's our interior artist Ryan Best, who also does the A covers. He when he does commissions at conventions, he's done some really cool superhero art with these like Art Nouveau accent pieces, sort of in the background. He loves that aesthetic, sort of Alphonse Mucha inspiration. And when I was looking to do like a really cool 4th cover, I really wanted to give him a chance to flex hard.
Yeah,
I think he's incredibly overlooked and wildly talented. So I was like, listen, I want to do a wraparound cover. Here are some elements that I'd like to have included. I was like, if you would like to, I would like for you to really go wild with that love of Art Nouveau and make something that is stylistically identifiable. And he came back and I think delivered a cover that is kind of redefining his career. And it's a beautiful piece. I adore it. Like if I could plaster that thing on my forehead, I would.
That's how I feel about the what I just showed you about the patriarch with his family. I'm just so proud to be part of it. This, like, the design of this is really cool. But the colors are just so good. I just like that what like they're almost a little bit washed. There's a word that's just not hitting my brain right now. They're not garish. They're subtle, I guess. It's so cool, these colors.
Yeah. There's a little bit of muting, and he's using sort of secondary iterations of primary colors. So if you look at like the framing all around, those reds are a little bit of like a burnt red or a
Yes.
brown red. The greens aren't pure green. It's like a sort of green blue, little bit of yellow, as opposed to like a white background. So it really does allow the figures in the foreground to pop in a
Yep.
big way. Like he's really like just taking it to the next level. He colored both of his covers. And I think part of that has been a great example of the collaboration between him and our colorist Fabi on the interiors, because we're constantly talking. And when we were first going through designs and covers and whatnot, Fabi had given us a little bit of advice and consultation about her approach to coloring, and I think he's taken it and run with it, and just
Yeah, I
given
think
us
a
some-
rookie would have made the buildings like realistic colors, and it wouldn't have made the foreground stand out so well.
Yeah, no, he really knocked it out of the park. And then that's our stretch goal cover. So if and when this campaign hits 10K, that will be unlocked. It's by an artist out on the West Coast named Ryan Shoemate, and it's sort of a play on Greek mythology with Hercules, his conflict with the bull in the city square, as he sort of wields the sort of patriarchal lightning, this idea of his masculinity being excised and weaponized against the bull, which is often another symbol of masculinity and fertility. So yeah.
So you got stretch goals, a variant cover, unlocked, sticker for all physical backers, and a wraparound cover. Cool. So this is the interior work. I like this. Again, you have that same muted color palette, which I really do like. You got the main characters kind of standing out, and the people in the background just aren't blobs of color. They have individual color, but your mind instantly focuses on what's important. Really, really cool, real subtle. I really dig it. Again, I wouldn't have invited you if I didn't like the comic, And of course, it's not the kid friendliest of comics, but nothing too bad here. I kind of get accused of being a prude because my comic is like more wholesome and everything. But what fits the story, and I like this. He right in the middle of everything. So the premise is that he literally needs these endorphins to work his powers. So literally the better he feels, the more powerful he is. And if I may spoil a little bit, he's in a situation that's just not fun. And he's like, what am I doing? I'm losing my power. I thought that was a pretty clever. I don't want to say gimmick because that cheapens what you're doing here, but I love realistic limitations on superhero powers. Like, I always kind of dump on DC, but we love DC, we're comic book people, but like the color yellow, like I love Marvel style weaknesses. Spider-Man's weakness is not obvious. He cares about his infirm family and the Thing's weakness is his psychological. He's crushed by this taken away of his humanity. His weakness is a little bit of both. Like if he's not having a good time, if he's not feeling good, he's literally weak.
Yeah, and it speaks. Everything that we do is always an attempt to speak to like the theme of the story and the emotional core. So, we're talking about this idea of performative masculinity and how, men in power are often kind of emotionally fragile because they have not grounded themselves before they take those positions of power and scrutiny and responsibility. And so, what happens if what happens if your fuel for performance is how you feel, right? Like every man and every person, this isn't just applying to the male experience in this case, but like, how do you perform at your highest? How do you be your best when you're not feeling your best? I think that's a universal theme that anybody can connect to.
And bringing it back to old school comics, I'm not. Are you familiar with the Gladiator from the X-Men? The alien Mohawk Superman kind of homage. His power was based on his confidence. If he was, he could knock down buildings, but then if he starts to doubt his power, he could get knocked out by a punch to the jaw. So yeah,
cool. No, I actually wasn't familiar with that.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's old John Byrne. That's I think a Fantastic Four 250. You're talking to a comic book nerd over here. So these are your past projects?
Yeah, so that first one that we're scrolling through is called Area 51, the Helix Project. That was my first work in comics. It was a six issue sci-fi thriller. Yeah, those are available in the add-on section for those readers that might be interested. It takes advantage of my academic background, which is in molecular and cellular biology. It's what I went to school for. Yeah, cool. So there's a little bit of hard science woven in the sci-fi. It's a really emotional story about reconciling identity with memory and with loss. And
is this crowdfunded also?
Correct. Yep.
Oh, cool. Wow. You see, like I said, I just discovered you through Rise because I'm a superhero fanboy, So this is cool. I didn't know about this. And tell me about this. This is a horror? I assume?
No. So it is a collection of 4 short stories themed around or that are sort of centered around this theme of perspective, this idea that as you're approaching midnight on the precipice of 2 days, what you choose to take with you is the determination between life or death. And so after working on the Helix Project for the first 2 years of my career, I really wanted to flex some creative muscles, play in a couple of different spaces and tell some different stories. So there are 4 short stories. I worked with 4 different artists, and actually my first collaboration with my interior artist and letterer on Rise was in the last story of that collection. But I really just wanted to kind of show that I'm not just going to be the sci-fi guy, that I can
Okay.
that I can
Cool.
play around and tell different stories. And each of these stories, while disconnected plot wise, sort of play around with perspective from a couple different angles. And I'm super proud of what we were able to do. So,
Oh,
but
cool.
yeah, those couple pages that you see on the screen now, that was actually Ryan, and he colored his own work in that story as well.
Cool. So you're not going to be pigeonholed as that superhero guy. You can do a lot of different things. Cool.
Well, I actually aggressively did not want to do independent superheroes for a very long time. I've said during interviews for years that I do not want to do it unless I really feel like I have something to add, which is hard. To not only add something but to execute in a way that makes something feel loving to the genre. I think that there's a lot of contrarian shock value superhero comics that are just superheroes doing things that they shouldn't with no nuance and just trying to raise a couple eyebrows. And I really, stepping into this legacy and the sort of weight of history, I wanted to do something that shows love to the things that I appreciate about superhero comics, because obviously I'm a fan, but
Okay.
I also wanted to make sure that we could say something different with a genre that often has a lot of repeat, a lot of repeat storytelling.
Cool. Uh, it's funny. You can see what I backed right here. Here's my selection.
Mhm.
But here's available. You got digital, which I'm a digital catch up tier. That's great. That
Yeah,
offer that.
$10, 74 plus pages. I think
Yeah,
that's a steal.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And here's number 2. Rise cover B. Cover C. Okay, different prices for different covers. Catch up bundles, connecting covers. That is really cool. That is really cool. This I think I got to go back and back this. I backed before this was released, I think.
I think it was there. I think the thing is
Uh,
sometimes people get really excited by the first couple of options and then
yeah,
they don't scroll.
I think that's exactly what happened. Oh, and this is all of your work, huh?
Yeah, so you can get a little bit of everything. The digital library of the Helix Project, Minutes to Midnight, and the first 2 issues of Rise, $27, over 300 pages, and absolute like a tome of extra behind the scenes material. So
Oh,
if you're a fan that just likes to see how the sauce is made, or you're an aspiring creator, we've got a lot of stuff on sort of art development, how things translate from the initial stage in the script to the finished page. Just kind of stuff that I wish that I had as resources when I was learning how to
cool.
wrestle with the comic book form.
Here's a great package deal. All the covers. Pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
you save a little bit of money, and you
Oh,
get some really beautiful cover art.
and bundles for retail is excellent, excellent, excellent. Because I don't know about you, but I kind of feel bad bypassing the comic book stores, being that I grew up working in comic book stores, hanging out in comic book stores. But
Yeah, I mean it's a different kind of market. I'm the same. I love comic book stores. I would not have a career if it wasn't for my local comic book store at the time. And I think the reality though is that the consumer at the comic book store is very different from the consumer online.
yes,
Um, Especially because comics have been made as a sort of disposable physical product, fairly low production value, and the opportunity with something like this is to create something a little bit more premium, that's going to hold together better, that's going to feel better in your hands, it's not going to tear when you turn a page. So it's I love making sure that we can put these shops in books, because I think that's how you engage community, and that's how you really get to give back to the audience. But it is different, and comics is such a low margin business to try
yeah.
to
Tell me
try to make it worthwhile for the retailer is really tough. So
yes,
I try to do my best. Like our retailer tiers are like, you're getting more than what Diamond or a traditional distributor would give on discount for a premium book. So I very much believe in that same landscape and what it has to provide for our industry.
I just saw, I got distracted. I noticed that we both have the same Green Lantern on, on on our shelves behind us. Yeah, has that comic book creds, shared cred. So you were talking about you grew up reading superhero books. What are you some of your favorite comics that you grew up reading?
Yeah,
And
so it's funny.
you say young stuff, and I feel like an old man.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I was a little bit older when I started reading comics. I was like 16, 15,
Okay,
16.
that is pretty
Um,
old to start. Yes.
yeah, I think I mean I grew up with the like pretension that, comics were for kids, and obviously it's aggressively wrong. And I kind of found my way in with Grant Morrison's Batman stuff. It
Oh,
was
good stuff.
after it had originally been published. Like I started reading comics in like 2013, maybe 2014, but I went down a rabbit hole of like Wikipediaing Batman stuff because I grew up with the animated series and the Dwayne McDuffie Justice League cartoon and all of that. So that was my access point, was Batman. And ironically, the first comics I ever bought were a collector's set of Final Crisis, and they came in the mail. I had no idea what the hell was going on, and but was captivated and had so many questions. And obviously, the J.G. Jones artwork was out of this world.
Yes.
And so again, went down another internet rabbit hole and saw Grant Morrison's name attached to a Batman run in tandem with Final Crisis, and kind of went from there. And like I didn't really know that graphic novels like collected the single issue, so I like went on eBay and was buying like full lots of Grant Morrison's Batman. And eventually, once I had finished that, I was like, where do I go from here? I went to the comic shop and I got handed the New 52 Batman Volume 1, The Court of Owls, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and that changed my life. Like that, like I remember I was not a reader growing up. I didn't have the attention span for
Oh,
anything.
really?
Yeah, not at all. And
Considering that
I
you're a
remember
microbiologist, I figured you'd be like the best
no,
reader in your class. Wow.
no, I'm so bad at reading. Like if the minute the minute I get bored, I cannot force myself to give a shit about anything.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy.
That blows me away.
It's unexpected, but I remember just like powering through that trade in one night, and I was like, okay, get the second trade the next
Well,
day.
in your defense, you finally found something worth the effort and worth reading. Some, you know what I mean? Like
Sure, for
the
sure.
story I always tell from third grade, I couldn't read, and here I am in third grade, and literally I was in the bottom reading group, and my friends got into comics, and I found something worth the effort to read. Before that, I was just like, yeah, read whatever gets the teacher off my back. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was just really taken with that story because, I had just read the Grant Morrison stuff. So I was like, oh, like, even though this is a reboot, this ostensibly still carries with it the history of everything that I just read and feels fresh and new. And I remember at the time I was already starting to catch up, and all they had was like the third volume of that run had not come out yet. And at the time, with the bigger stories, DC would do like a hardcover release first, and then you'd get the soft cover trade like several months
Right.
after. And so I remember like really breaking the bank, like the extra $8 to buy the hardcover version, because I could not wait. I could not be bothered to wait. And so I got Death of the Family, and after that, I was like, well, now I'm caught up with the trades, and I ended up becoming a Wednesday Warrior from then on, and buying Zero Year, and reading Batman bled into buying Batman and Detective and Justice League, and then Green Lantern and Flash, and eventually, taking the leap over and buying Marvel, and as an adult sliding into indie, and that was sort of my journey into reading comics.
Wow. You're one of the you have a unique story in that, not that 16 is an adult, but I could say later in comic book life, most of the people that I talk to just seem to be like, yeah, I've always read comics. There was a comic in my house as a kid, be it an Archie or whatever, and you like you said, by 16, like that is kind of late. Like I don't find. May I ask how old you are now?
I'm 26.
Okay, because it's almost like youngins don't get comics anymore? Like, when you were 16 going into the comic shop, did you find yourself like one of the youngest people?
No, I was. Was I one of the youngest? Yes. Oh, but my God, yeah, by far.
Yeah.
It was an interesting experience for me, and honestly, like something I look back on very fondly. The early days of going to the shop and like talking to the guys behind the counter and learning about what was coming out and sort of the history behind some of these characters and the iconicity. It was. I remember really looking forward, like every couple of weeks, going to the shop, picking up my books, and like fiending for that next hit of Batman. Especially like I remember when Endgame, but like the Batman Endgame was coming out, and like that first issue was like him getting stormed by the Justice League, and I remember being in like a mall food court reading that and being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I have to wait another month." Like,
Yeah.
it's it's funny. Like I haven't felt that way about a monthly comic in so long, but I just talking about it, I can feel that same excitement kind of building up in my chest.
Yeah, it is fun. What you just said, I in my comic store, I would get my bag of comics. I had my pull list, and I remember leaving because it was a tiny little parking lot, and if you just stayed there, the next car couldn't come in, so you had to leave. And then there was a Burger King. Going into the Burger King drive-through, and then just sitting in the Burger King parking lot, eating French fries and a burger, reading like I didn't even make it home where I had to read these. Usually, by the time I got home or by the time I went to bed that night, I was done for the month. I'm like, now what do I do?
Mhm.
Break them out and read them again. I skipped this question just because I was waiting for a good break. But Marcus Kelligrew said, you saw that you're from Charlotte, North Carolina. Were you at Heroes Con?
Yeah, we were both at Heroes Con actually. We premiered the first issue there. We were tabled right beside each other. And yeah, Ryan I think lives just outside of Charlotte. But yeah, it was awesome. It was actually the first time I've ever gotten to like do a show with a collaborator in that way. And it was cool to see like our signatures on the same book together. And yeah, he's a great dude, and we're hoping to go back next year. I know there's a big, it's not Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, but there's another shop that runs like a small Charlotte-based Comic-Con that we might be doing early next year. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, Ryan is near Charlotte.
Yeah, I just realized I read that completely wrong, but you understood anyway. So may I ask, what state are you in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Oh, okay. I'm in New York, so we're not too far away. So you just drove down?
No, I flew. I fly to most shows now, just because it's a timing thing, and like
Yeah.
I still have a full-time job. Like I wait tables in tent bars, so it's luckily it's somewhat flexible, but it's one of those things where I'm working up until the day I leave, and I'm working as soon as I come back. So the added efficiency of plane travel makes that a little bit more possible.
Yeah.
Although I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of been fixing to do a proper road trip. It's been a
I
while.
love a road trip.
It just becomes an issue of time, and especially because con season is generally focused during the summer, and that's when I make most of my money. It's hard to take the extra time to be on the road.
It's work gets in the way of comics, huh? Doesn't it?
I mean, I think that, fortunately I'm getting to a point where in a couple of years, I don't think it'll have to be that way anymore. But for now, yeah, it is very much the case.
I'm in construction, and in my trade, if I take off, I just don't get paid. You know what I mean? I do pretty good while I work. So I really wanted to go to Heroes Con. Marcus lives by there. He's been inviting my childhood friends. We scattered around the country. We all seem to meet at Heroes Con, and every year they invite me. But next year I'll actually have a comic book, so it'll make like smart business sense to go. Maybe I'll see you next year. But I just so mad I couldn't go. Like everybody that I've interacted with since I've been doing this channel was like, "We missed you," But
you would probably love it. I mean, it's a great convention, and I'll say this as somebody who I do anywhere from 1 to 2 of these a month. I've gone all around the States. I've done several in Canada. I've done the UK. It is one of like the purest comic book shows out there ever. Like it's like that is up there, and Thought Bubble in the UK are like almost completely focused, are pretty much completely focused on comics. I'll tell you what, I don't like those types of shows. Ironically, I don't make as much money at, but like as a fan of comics and a lover of the medium, it just makes my heart happy being in places like that because the energy is different.
it's funny that you said that because as people came back, I've been talking to people now for almost 2 years, and I talk to a lot of people every day, send messages, not on camera, and they all said the same thing. When you go to Comic-Con, you realize that Twitter and online isn't real. That people love comics and they're friendly. We were talking before we went live that we were both lamenting how snippy and whiny and mean-spirited a lot of the comic world is right now, and it's just so demoralizing. So I guess when you go to Comic-Cons and you see a dad and their kids dressed up as the Flash or whatever buying comics, man, I can't wait to go.
Honestly, it's an amazing experience. I mean, it can be really hard. Like conning is really hard when you're trying to build an independent brand. But once you start picking up some momentum and you have people that, have bought your stuff or recognizing your work, and they come and they talk to you, there's no better feeling than knowing that something that you made really reached somebody like that. And knowing that somebody is thinking of, like, they're going out of their way to come and meet you and say hello and talk to you about something that you created. There's no more motivating factor than that.
Cool. That is so cool. I'm doing my own campaign. I'm going to be filling my own stuff. So I always like to talk to people like literally as a resource. So you use Kickstarter. We were again talking about as far as I know, there's 3 platforms. There's the Fund My Comic, there's Kickstarter, and Indiegogo, and they each have their fans.
There's Zoop as well.
I'm sorry.
There's
Zoop.
another platform called Zoop. I think it's almost exclusively like comics and games.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that started. Didn't you need to have like an invite or?
Maybe back in the day, yeah. Now I think not anybody can run. You have to like submit your project. So it's still got a little bit of that exclusivity, but I don't think it's invite anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it was invite, and I was like, I don't know. Nobody knows me. So you exclusively on Kickstarter. You're not planning to switch to any other platforms?
I mean, I would think about doing like second chance campaigns elsewhere just to kind of access new audiences and make a little extra money. But the primary engine will pretty much be Kickstarter until one of these other options become more competitive. And the reality is you getting in on the ground floor with Kickstarter, I offer things through Kickstarter that I won't be able to offer doing a campaign elsewhere down the road. So like, for example, like we're given the opportunity to get drawn into the book, which 3 backers did for Rise issue 1, and they're featured very prominently. Like issue 1, page 1, the guy that gets pulled away so that John can sit next to the woman at the bar, that was a backer.
You're the annoying guy who gets swept out of the room. You get 23 skidoo. Hey, congrats.
Yeah, I think it's a fun cameo. Another backer is actually the mayor of New York. So we try to give people really fun. Cool. Yeah, we try to give people really fun, memorable cameos. But because we're seeking the funding as we're working on the book, that's something we're able to do on Kickstarter, as opposed to taking it to Fund My Comic as a second chance campaign and having the book already done. So great reason to get in on the ground floor as far as that goes. But I think, as we were talking about off camera, I think at the moment, as far as the first choice, Kickstarter is the biggest player, and I don't know if there's
the biggest name recognition, and
it has infrastructure. It has the like you said, the name recognition, and it has the widest user base of any of the crowdfunding platforms. So your access, your pool or volume of consumer is much higher.
Right. I'm a board gamer just as much as I am a comic book guy. So I've been using Kickstarter. Geez, I can't even remember. I'm trying to maybe for like 14 years or so, if my memory serves correctly. You know what I mean? So it does have name recommend to the point when people say Kickstarter, they mean crowdfunding. It's kind of like Frisbee is the name for the flying disc. We don't even realize that Frisbee is the brand. Yeah. So yes, it has recommendation. It has a built-in fan base, and I have a couple of friends that say like you got to go on Kickstarter. So yeah, I am going to do the rounds, but I don't want to do it at the same time and compete with myself.
No, I know somebody who's like did a Fun My Comic and they're like, I'm launching on Kickstarter and Indiegogo at the same time. I was like, I think that's an awful idea.
Yeah.
But, who am I to say?
So how many campaigns have you run? Because I'm sorry, I talked over you. I apologize.
It's okay. This is my 9th.
Wow. I knew, because again, I discovered you through Rise, and then you told me you had the other, but I didn't realize you had 9 campaigns. Do you fulfill them yourself? Do you have a fulfillment?
Yeah. No, I do it myself. Everything gets shipped to my home, and I basically take my living room is just like swallowed in boxes and books and merchandise. So everything is a very grassroots effort.
Yeah, that's admirable. I have like a number in my head that if I hit, I'll hire RJ from Critical Blast, but so far I haven't hit it yet. So my wife and I, she just looked at me like, we'll be sending out comics.
You will be sending.
Yeah, and she corrected me. You will be sending out comic. Yeah, my garage will be littered with nonsense that I have to ship out to people.
It is the burden that we bear.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it relaxing. Do you collect like floppy comics? Like I bag and board, and I just find it relaxing. Like tonight, after I have guests coming later for board games. After they leave, I plan on bagging and boarding and sorting comics and listening to some music. I love that.
I wish. I feel like I look at it and I get a little. I'm like, oh man, I have to sit here and bag and board comics forever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And to be fair, like when I'm fulfilling campaigns and I'm bagging and boarding hundreds of comics at a time, I think I have to do them in such like shotgun blast bursts that I just get exhausted. I'm like, I don't want to touch any more of these for the rest of the week,
It's yeah, I don't know. It's the anal retentive comic book fan, like I got to start at number 1. I got to read them in order. I put them in chronological order before. Like I have a stack of comics right over here that, like last night before I went to bed, I got up and I checked to make sure that they were in the right order. So today when I read comics that I don't, why does that matter? But it does matter.
That's funny. I think that could also just be to like the slight generational gap in the comic book reading. Because when it comes to like, once I put things in the long box, I'm super anal retentive about like making sure that it's organized there. But for the most part, otherwise, until it is like organized and put away, my collection and my stacks are a mess. Like I'll just be combing through trying to find the right one. But I mean, I actually hate to admit like that I just have 3 stacks of like comics and graphic novels surrounding me right now. But such is the life.
I mean, I made no bones about it. I still have 18 long boxes of comics I haven't read yet because I'm just a lunatic, So there you go.
Crazy.
Now, I wanted to ask you, you're going to cons now, so I assume you're selling comic books to people that never backed you, don't even know you're crowdfunding. Mm-hmm. So obviously you print a little bit above what you get. So, you'll have some for the second, but you must print a lot extra in order to do that. How do you figure out those numbers?
Part of it is looking at what the unit price will scale at when we go up in quantity, and sort of I'll after shows I'll make spreadsheets and sort of see what I'm moving at shows, look at like the pace that things are moving at, and take into consideration what of my back catalog is being purchased as add-ons in other campaigns. So I look at like, okay, if I can get it down to this price per unit, I might hold on to it for X amount of time, but that means I won't have to reprint for a while and my profit margin goes up broadly. So depending on the book nowadays, I usually print anywhere from 2,000 to like, I mean, my highest print order was 3,000, but I generally probably stick between 2,000 and 2,500 copies per book. Now, okay. In the beginning, I think like the first Helix Project book ever was like 750. And then I think the second book was like about 1,000. Third book was like 15.
That's still a lot.
Fourth book was 15, yeah. And then it was around like, I reprinted issue 1 of the Helix Project, and that was the one that I did at 3,000 because I was like, okay, it's a 6-issue series. People will always want issue 1s as like a sort of taste. And I got to do something cool with it. Like when I I didn't think I was going to be reprinting my first book so fast. So we got to do like a brand new variant cover. We embossed the cover as well and added like a bunch of cool behind the scenes features in the back. We did the same thing for issue 2, but as opposed to embossing, we added this beautiful spot gloss as well. So it's because printing is expensive. So if I can find ways to make sure that I don't have to keep going through that process, because I'm already doing it a lot with new projects, I will.
Yeah. Again, I always like to ask people. I get people who've made 9 campaigns, ask them all the questions, because I'm in the middle of my first. And sometimes I realize I don't even know what's coming. You know,
You never do until it happens. That's the unfortunate reality of crowdfunding, and it's all changing so fast. It's like I find like I have a lot of it's weird to say because I still feel like the new guy, but I still have a lot of people who are sort of coming up behind me who ask me questions about like the numbers and the marketing and the monetary stuff. And it's like, frankly, I have no idea. It's changing all the time. I have sort of speculation and I have my experiences, but even then, in the
you're still
3
doing
years,
the 9 campaigns, so you're doing something right.
I appreciate that, but
Don't sell yourself short. Yeah.
After 3 years, though, there were things that I was doing in the beginning that I knew objectively were true or helpful that now are not. So it's changing. Like the landscape is changing so quickly.
Have
So
you ever
now,
made disastrous mistakes that you're like, oh man, I can't afford to do that again, you know, or that was, ooh God, that could sink me.
I've definitely made plenty of mistakes. I mean, early on, for example, I was not charging nearly enough for shipping. Like, you know, because you got to imagine when I started 3 years ago, I was like 22, 23, and I like had never shipped out that many packages a day in my life, you know, like, and I didn't know what things were worth. I didn't really understand like international shipping, and
Tell me
keep
about
in
it.
mind, I started during the pandemic when like shipping prices were going crazy out of nowhere and taking forever. So like learning how to ship and fulfill was, I mean, frankly, like it took me like the first 2 years were just a massive, massive lesson in fulfilling and shipping product. I mean, the big thing now that I have to make sure is that I'm not getting overwhelmed and making stupid mistakes. Like on Rise 1, so much was going on when we launched that book, and I was like in the middle of the campaign flying to the UK to do Thought Bubble, that I forgot to add variant covers to the add-on menu of the project. So people who like didn't want to get the full 4 cover bundle could not just pick up A cover, B cover, A cover, D cover, A cover, C cover. They would have to go 1 cover or bust. And then because I spent so much time adding my back catalog to the add-on menu, I forgot.
Sort of stupid mistake. Oh my God.
Right. And I was like 2 weeks into the campaign before I realized it. And I was like, oh man, I really like cut
2
myself
weeks.
off. Yeah. I know the moment that I recognized it, I had actually, funnily enough, just like walked around London with Rich Johnson from Bleeding Cool. And I went to go get dinner in sort of central London. And I was like combing through. Oh, somebody had messaged me. They're like, what if I want to get the B cover or the C cover, but I don't want the bundle? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like everything's in the add-on menu. And I was prompted
It's
to go.
simple. What do you mean? It's just a simple
Yeah.
button.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't have any of the extra covers in the add-on menu. So people that wanted like 2 or 3 covers as opposed to like 1 or all 4 couldn't do it. And you know, obviously the beginning of the campaign is the most important. So I've really just like, shot myself off at the knees. So I'm still making mistakes.
That with Kickstarter?
Huh?
Were you able to fix that through Kickstarter?
Totally. I was able to add it. But the reality is like not taking advantage. Like I probably lost at least $1,000 of people not being able to add on books in the beginning when they're the most excited about the campaign.
Right.
That is the reality. The leverage that you have when you have a new exciting product. People will make impulse decisions and add that extra cover. Whereas me going back, as a matter of fact, and updating in messages and be like, hey, I screwed up. You guys can go back and add this. Well, now that excitement, that momentum isn't really there anymore. And some people would go back and add covers.
Yes, some people, but not like you said, not those super excited people that chomping at the bit to get the new.
Right,
stuff.
because at that point, they're like, "Well, now I have to go back and do something again." You know, it's not just there. It's not one smooth
Right.
motion. So
It's not new and shiny anymore.
right, so I'm still making mistakes. Now the context of those mistakes are very different, whereas before it was inexperience. Now it's because I get a little overwhelmed and have a bunch of stuff going on and make dumb decisions or lack thereof.
Uh, when I launched, I have a coin. You know, it says Heroic Tales. It's got the patriarch symbol on one side. It says Heroic Tales on the other, and it, you added it, but it didn't get figured in. So for like only 4 or 5 hours, thank God, people thought they were buying the coin and they didn't get the coin.
Mm.
I mean, and then we fixed it and we were able to put it on. I sent out a message, you know, and a couple of people that were kind enough to rebuy it. Like I guess within 4 hours they still had that initial enthusiasm to like, I don't mind doing something else. You know, John's a nice guy or whatever. I really want the coin. But yeah, you know, you're like checking something out, and somebody messaged me. It's like, dude, I went the coin for free, and I'm like, no, that coin was expensive. It can't be for free.
Mm.
Yeah. We were talking beforehand. When you purchased my comic on the credit card, it came up as YouTube because I was like, yeah, I'm a YouTube guy. So a lot of people were like, I didn't buy anything on YouTube, and disputing. That almost sank my whole campaign. Luckily, Luke Stone and I were able to figure it out. But oh man, I made some pretty disastrous mistakes that I'm kind of grateful that I made them now, to be honest, because I don't learn anything from doing. If I do it right the first time, I don't remember what I did. But if I F up, man, I'll never forget that. Yeah. So are you working with the same art team on? I mean, I know you're not working with the same art team, but do you have like a core guys that you work with, or core ladies and gentlemen that you work with?
No, not really. I mean, at this stage, I've worked with dozens of different artists and collaborators. I mean, certainly, like if I announce a series, my goal is to have the same creative team for the entire series.
Yes.
But no, yeah, I mean, Rise. The only cross pollination is that Rise has like I worked with Ryan and Matthias on the last story in Minutes to Midnight. And truthfully, I mean, working with Ryan in that short story was my litmus test to see if I wanted to do something longer with him and to see how we work together. And obviously it panned out very well.
Cool.
And same with Matthias. So, and we do have like, I have a couple, you know, I have a cover artist here or there that I've worked with in the past, like, the B cover artist for issues 1 and 2 of Rise drew the first story in Minutes to Midnight. So, you know, there is some cross pollination, but I don't really look to like carry over because I want to make sure that the style and the energy of the artist becomes a part of the personality of the book. And I want all the books to feel identifiable in their own right, outside of being connected by me.
Cool. Now, have you been writing your whole life? I know you said you got into comics when you were 16.
No, not at all. The Helix project was the first thing I ever wrote, to be honest, outside of like school assignments. It was a weird process, and I've always been the creative type. Like I was very musical growing up. I've always loved stories. But I didn't really grow up with I didn't grow up with a bunch of cable. My mom is a Portuguese immigrant, so like she didn't really much believe in like spending a bunch of money to go to the movie theater outside of like the rare occasion. So it was weird. I think I always kind of, as a kid, would just imagine things all the time to let the day go by. And I've become like an avid lover of film and television as an adult, sure, but in comics, obviously. But yeah, I wasn't really growing up. I was not really engaging with that type of content or writing very much. It really was like when I was in college, I didn't have many friends into comics, so I started doing YouTube and I was doing reviews, and they became more and more analytical because I felt like we were
You're a
missing.
scientist.
Yeah, and I also felt like comics criticism was kind of trash. Like people didn't review comics the way that film or prose got reviewed. People weren't talking about the technical application the craft when they were discussing like whether or not they felt like something was good or not. And so I did a bunch of research on like the craft of making comics and storytelling, and even like going as far as to read like cinematography and directing books. And I would talk about comics in the way that I felt like comics deserved to be talked about. And I was also doing interviews at the time. And,
Cool.
you know, the one thing that was constant was I'd interview people that I really admired, like Robert Venditti or Brian Hill or Pete Tomasi. And they'd be like, you kind of seem to have a head for this stuff. Why aren't you writing comics? And I was like, I don't know. It just never seems feasible, you know? And I had done like a press panel for New York Comic Con in 2019. And the sort of keynote speakers were CB Cebulski and Chris Claremont. And I had asked a question, and as the panel was like leaving, CB and I had kind of crossed hairs, and he was just like, have you ever thought about working in comics? And I was like, not until the editor-in-chief of Marvel asked me that question. And he handed me his business card, told me to apply. I did. I interviewed in Midtown Manhattan the week that hand sanitizer and toilet paper was selling out everywhere, thinking that a couple months later I would be working for the House of Ideas. And obviously that didn't happen. And several months through the pandemic, I was like, well, I wanted it. Like, I didn't realize how much I wanted it until it was taken away. And that's where I took to Kickstarter and produced my own work. And frankly, I mean, in the moment, it was really, really heartbreaking. But to be honest with you, I'm really happy that it happened the way it did, because I think that there's a possibility that I might have gotten lost in the machine early, and just become a part of the system. And I think now that I've had the opportunity to take my licks and to do things independently and for all intents and purposes, do them the hard way, I think I'm all the better for it. And I think as a creative person and as a figure in the industry, it makes me a much greater asset.
Yeah, and you got your own toys to play with. You know,
Mhm.
you own the stuff. As much as I would love to write the Fantastic Four, because that's my favorite all time, I do like that I have my own little world that is mine. You know, for good or for bad, it's mine. And, you know,
Totally.
if people like it, it's because of me. If people don't like it, it's also because of me.
Mm.
But this is an hour. I chopped down a tree the other day, and I got to get all the wood off the lawn before my lawn gets burnt up. So, anything you want to say to us? I find an hour is the perfect time for a video. You know.
Sure. I mean, no, John, thanks for having me. Thanks for the
No, I
opportunity.
enjoy your comic, and this is what I like to do. I like to talk to people about comics. I like to get the word out about comics that I enjoyed. So, man, this was a pleasure for me.
Yeah, and for anybody watching, I hope you check out the campaign. We've got 18 days left as of recording this thing. We're at just about $9,100-ish, and we're trying to break 10K sometime in the next few days.
Your link up, and I put my link up. How bad is that as a host? Yeah, you're killing it. You know, I think you're doing a pretty good job. And how often do you have a campaign?
Once every 3 or 4 months.
Oh my God! Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so we're trying to break some stretch goals. If you check out the campaign, we are I think the most competitively priced comic in crowdfunding right now.
Yes, your prices are very, very reasonable.
The print quality is very high.
Yes, absolutely. People who watch my channel know I'm very particular about the way my comics feel. You know, your comic is a real comic. I mean that in the best sense of the word. It looks good. It reads well. It feels good, which is very important to me. You know, it's I don't want to say anything bad about other people, so I'm not mentioning names, but I've got some crowdfunded comics that I'm like, this wasn't ready to be born yet. It needed to gesticulate for another month or two before you. But yours is excellent. And again, I didn't know you had 9 campaigns, so you're a veteran.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you know, I also believe in delivering value and making sure people get their money's worth. Like I have been. I was a consumer. I was a high school kid with no money who suffered to pay the extra $8 so that I could get that Batman hardcover, you know?
Yeah.
So I believe in that. And I believe in making sure that these stories are accessible, because above all, I'm a storyteller and I want people to engage with these things more than I want to sell a product. So it's like, if you want the first 2 issues of Rise on digital for the 74 plus pages, you're paying $10.
Right.
You want to catch up and grab the connecting covers, the connecting A covers, you're paying $22, 74 pages. I think the cover stock is like 100-pound cover stock and 80-pound interior with, and mind you, the first issue has two triple page spreads. There's a fold out, which
Yeah. I saw that. That took me by surprise. I was like, I get a centerfold in here. What kind of comic am I reading?
Yeah, it's actually, so if you take a look at it, is the first issue. Where is the page? So
don't wrinkle your comic in front of me. I won't be able to sleep at night.
But yeah, so you have a full triple page spread. There's actually two of them.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck and still getting a very premium product, which can't be said for a lot of what's out there. So I think it's great value. To answer the comment.
Yeah, this is an interesting question.
My science background plays a lot of a role. I mean, the Helix Project, my first book, sci-fi thriller, I really got to get into the weeds because like my specialty was molecular and cellular biology with a focus in genetics, and we were dealing with shape-shifting aliens. So I really got to play into that. And even in Rise, I mean, we're playing with that as well, and we're adding a degree of pseudoscience to the world to sort of limit it and make it a little bit more challenging for this character. I didn't want the basics to feel too easy. I wanted it to be obvious that this character actually has to think and struggle and problem solve in order to do his job. It makes it harder, and I think it makes him more endearing because everything is not easy for him. He's consciously making the choice to fight uphill battles to take care of people. So do I dumb it down? I try not to speak down to anybody, but I do my best to make it digestible. So for example, when we talk about his power set and the way that it scales with the amount of dopamine in his system, or in the second issue, actually, one of the earlier scenes is he's been a hero now for about 1.5 years, and he has to stop a skyscraper from collapsing onto the city. And one of the things that you realize is if a human-sized object were strong enough to lift a skyscraper, it would run right through the side of the building. You have to spread the force upon a greater surface area. That's basic physics. And so John has to find a creative way to keep that building from toppling.
I love that kind of stuff. And I appreciate that you said you can't make him all powerful. He has to struggle. I was on a channel talking with somebody, and I was talking about my character, and a person in the chat said, I'm coming up with a character who's the most powerful superhero in the world. He could beat your character. He could beat the Hulk. He could beat. And I'd say, well, quite frankly, that sounds like a rookie mistake. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but unless you're at One Punch Man, who's already been done, the all-powerful superhero is dull. We want to see tension. We want to see struggle. We want to see the hero rise up against tremendous odds. Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, we're telling stories. We're not creating video game characters.
There you go. That's a good,
to beat boss battles.
Way to say what I just said.
Yeah, I think. Sure. I mean, do what you want to do. Who am I to tell anybody how to create?
Right. Yeah, do what you want to do. Exactly. But in my opinion,
as far as I'm concerned, I'm telling a story about a character who has to overcome something great. And if they're overcoming something, it means that they have a deficiency. They have something that they need to work against and push against.
Nick is one of my guys who's been helping me along, coaching me along, and that's one of his things. There has to be tension. And if you could just beat anybody, where's the tension in that? And speaking of tension, Nick gives me a lot of tension, probably in my neck and in my ass area. He's just a pain. But I really have to go. I have to clear this lawn before my guests show up. I can't have people tripping all over wood. But thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. I'm rooting for you. I'm really impressed that you have 9 campaigns. I like your comic. I love the design. Perfect. This is a legit example of sometimes a superhero costume catches somebody's eye, and your price was cheap enough that I could take a risk, and I'm glad I did.
Thank you.
It wasn't a $35 gamble. I would have passed. You know what I mean? So I think you're doing everything right.
I appreciate that, John. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the vote of confidence and for the support. We're telling a story we care about. And like I said, at the end of the day, the primary concern is making sure that this story is read and engaged by the people who want it. And cool. I'm glad it panned out well in your case.
And come back, come back. We'll talk about number 3, after I read number 2, we'll talk about number 3. Thanks a lot, buddy. All right. See you, everybody. Thank you guys for showing up at an odd time for me. So I appreciate 22 people watching this, and then however many in the replays. Thanks a lot, everybody. And I got to get going before I get sued by my guests for having them trip and break their ankles. Bye-bye, everybody.